Sharpen pencils, clear your desk.
It's time to increase your nerdiness with Derek.
Well, hello. It's finally time to increase your nerdiness again. I'm Derek W. Truesdale. Are you ready to get your nerd on?
Yes.
See, last time I was talking about the telecine process, which takes 24 frame a second footage and converts it to 60 frames a second. And I showed you some of the problems that can arise in that footage and this kind of really annoying 3-2 pattern that you might want to get rid of. And I thought this time I was going to come here and tell you the answer of how to get rid of it. But it turned out there is so much complication, and I'll probably have to do more than one guide to fully explain how to get rid of it. I thought first, I want to warn you that in your situation, 24p may be more of a hassle than a help, and you may want to avoid it entirely. So I'm going to be talking about the pros and cons. Yes, there are cons to shooting in 24p. Now, first off, let me just tell you that 24p has two different descriptions of what it is. First, the 24 means every second there are 24 instants of time captured. And the P means that they're progressive frames every time they're captured, okay? So here's the thing. Let's talk about the good things about 24p. First off, progressive frames compress better. Because it's not like, all right, well, here's our frame, and actually it contains two different instants of time, but they're kind of woven together every other line, so part of it belongs in one moment, part of it belongs in the other. There's none of that. It's just like one still image, and it's just much easier to compress something like that, which means it'll probably end up looking better. Each of the individual frames will look better. They'll be more distinct, if you will. The other thing about progressive frames in 24p is it displays better on your computer, on a PC. On a tube television, CRTs, I mean, they can display interlaced video fine, and you might, in those cases, want to just leave it that way. But if your audience is going to be watching on YouTube or on their computers somehow, you might want to be going for the 24p kind of thing with progressive frames. And here's the thing. 24 frames a second, instead of having 60 instances of time, there are only 24. So guess what? Fewer frames per second means more detail per frame. So they'll end up looking better, you know, not quite as blocky and stuff. So there are some real advantages. I mean, imagine if you were a painter and it's like, okay, every hour I need 24 frames of video. Go do it. Get drawing. You'd be like, okay, 20. Now imagine I came to you and said, okay, I changed my mind. I need 60 frames from you every hour. Then you'd be like, oh my gosh, you know, they end up just being stick figures instead of like nice shaded, rendered things. You know, there's just, since you have more time to work on it, there's just, that translates to a more efficient use of bandwidth, to put it in nerd terms. And then the other thing about 24p is it's better for international releases. And a lot of the films coming out of Hollywood are geared toward not just America, the Americas, North, South, and Central and all that, but the rest of the world that uses PAL television, which is 25 frames a second. And basically the video converts really nicely. If you just speed it up a wee bit, it ends up converting very nicely. So, I mean, unless you're going for an international film or something, 24p might not be for you for the following reasons. First off, 24p, let's face it, can be a huge pain in the butt. I mean, you might have to render files an extra time just to get them to your editor. You might have to buy a more expensive editor to work with this footage. Or you might have to be more of a nerd and invest a lot of time in this. And let's face it, inverse telecine, it's a cool little trick to have in your nerd tool belt of knowledge. It's a cool thing to have, and the knowledge does help, but you might just be pulling your hair out. It might not be for you. Or else you might be in a business where it's like, all right, let's get this 24p footage through right away. So you have to spend an extra few hundreds of dollars, you know, to even do that. So it could cost more money and all that. But But the other problem with 24p, I don't know if everyone knows this, but motion is not handled as well because there are fewer moments of time, fewer frames per second, which means the motion is going to be jerkier, not as smooth as in video, which can be a real problem. Like if you want to pan across, your landscape or whatever, you better in 24p either do it really quick so it's just one blur, or really slow, or else it's going to be like, it'll give you a headache. I mean, you'll make your viewers want to throw up, like the Blair Witch Project, that kind of thing. Fewer frames per second means jerkier motion. So, I mean, this is really up to you. How much hassle do you want? And, I got to add this. If you're thinking, all right, 24p is the magic bullet. Yeah, it's going to make my video look like film. Well, there are a lot of factors that make a Hollywood-produced film better than anything you're going to shoot on your camera. And it's because you have whole teams of people working on this stuff. Very talented lighting directors. You think lighting is easy? No, those guys are driving fancy cars. They know what they're doing. It takes real talent and skill, and a lot of people work on making the film look good. And not only that, they use like these lenses on their cameras that basically cost more than your house. All right, and my video camera lens is not even close to that quality. So there's a whole lot of reasons that films look better. And as I said, progressive frames, they compress better, they can be more distinct, but then motion is jerky and it can be a big pain in the butt. So what's it got to do if you just want an alternative, which by the way, I am using right now. I'm looking at my camera. I have it set to 30p mode, just 30 progressive frames a second. Not every camera can do that, but that's one thing you can do if you're going for a computer audience. Just set it to 30p, and then it doesn't really matter. Any old editor can handle 30 progressive frames a second, even if it tries to think, oh, these are interlaced. I guess let's do a complicated little. This is like almost like an SAT thing, but. It's a much bigger problem to compress progressive or interlaced footage as if it was progressive. You'll just toast the footage and really wreck it. You shouldn't do that. You should either convert it to progressive or compress as interlaced. It's a much bigger problem than to convert progressive frames as interlaced. I mean, it's not quite as efficient, I guess, depending on your encoder. But it's really not a big deal to just take progressive frames and put them into your interlace editor. Not a big deal. So, either shoot in 30p mode, or you can take your interlaced footage and deinterlace it on the way out as you render. So you're converting to progressive frames. Or, if you're going for just DVD or a TV audience, just leave it interlaced. Compress it that way, and then let whoever's playing it back, let their machine fix it. So those are 3 things you can do to just avoid 24p. And it can save you a lot of headaches, and you might want to do it. That's my advice. But don't worry, for those of you people who don't want to turn back at my warning, to the true nerds who are listening, there is more for you in future episodes, so make sure you stay tuned to increase your nerdiness.
Sharpen pencils, clear your desk.
It's time to increase your nerdiness